So when you think about what are you going to grow, it's like, what are you targeting for nutrition? Are you targeting something for cancer? Are you targeting something for lots of things in general? And then which crops are most nutritious in what you're targeting, and which varieties? Because it differs, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, it differs between varieties. They've done a lot of studies on lettuce, and I'll get to that slide, and you'll see, especially for green and red leafy lettuces, the levels of differences between them is huge. So what variety you grow within your crops is important. Soil fertility can have a big effect on nutrition, and also the timing of planting and the timing of harvesting. And then we talked about environmental stressors. We talked about the cabbage looper, other stressors, heat, and then how you post-harvest. And we already hit that, so there, we're done. So you can, grow your vegetables and eat your medicine. That's my point. So this was the glucosinolates we talked about. Brassicas are the only food that has these. And they're very strong cancer-fighting, great antimicrobial, cardiovascular. And then we have what I talked about, the anti-inflammatory, acting like your pain relievers. And then here are the other high free radical scavengers, your beta-carotene, lutein and zeaxanthin. Those are going to be I ones. And your quercetin and anthocyanins. Of course, they're also high in vitamins. Almost all our vegetables have some level, and minerals. So these are the genus species of the Brassica family. And one of the things, if you do grow them, and you could get them to go to seed, you want to stay within the same, you want to, like, let's say you're growing broccoli, and then you add mustard greens, they're not going to cross, because they're in different species. But if you were growing broccoli and kale to seed, they would cross. And they're outcrossers, which means they're insect pollinators, and you're just going to have like 800 feet to a half a mile isolation. So knowing your, species and which varieties are in it is really important. So this is the glucosinolate thing. And here you see, this thing's not acting quite right, but so you have your broccoli, you rupture the cell either by cooking or chewing, but not cooking too long, because then you're going to destroy that enzyme. So 2 minutes or steaming. If you boil it, it's going into the water. So again, you're not getting it. And then that goes through another breakdown or combination, and there you get, this is the one you can buy, the sulforaphane, as a supplement, and that slows cancer growth and also prevents the DNA from mutation. So why not just get supplements instead of eating it? Well, because you don't have that enzyme in it. So it's really important to understand how a plant is giving you these nutrients. Flavonoids, has everybody heard that word? What about a flavonoid? So they're free radical scavengers, which are very important for diabetes, cancer, and brain protection. And their role in plants are, they actually are responsible for plant pigments. So when you see certain colors, those are flavonoids. So in the petals of plants, that's what attracts the pollinators. So they're important for pollination. They combat stress in the environment, and they actually use them to speak between the plants as cell messengers. So they're important in the plants. This was the quercetin I talked about, and we talked about it being an ionophore and pushing zinc into the cells to destroy the viruses. And so you can see you could eat and we'll go to that slide next, what's high in quercetin with some of these other zinc-rich vegetables, like your spinach, broccoli, corn, and zucchini. So quercetin is high. It's highest in onions, especially red onions. And this is in order. And then kale, broccoli, hot and sweet peppers, tomatoes, rutabaga, spinach, and then your fruit, citrus, and grapes. So, you know, if you're eating any of those, you're getting this compound. And it's really fun to know when you're eating it. Oh, this is helping me a whole lot. And I mentioned that what its role in plants is, so you can see the plant produces it for itself, and we get the secondary benefits. These are the anthocyanins, which, again, anti-inflammatory, great for immune system, and they're finding a lot of studies helping prevent against cancer, heart disease, and stroke. So they're only in bright colored vegetables, so your white carrots, your white cauliflower, they're not going to have these. Carrots, purple cabbage, purple kale, purple corn, and radish. If you had a green cabbage, it wouldn't have levels of the anthocyanins. So that's the one that you want to think about, those really strong colors, especially purple. And they do have some purple kale now, which is great. There's a lot of plant breeding going on around nutritional components. So the carotenoids are beta-carotene, which we convert to vitamin A in our liver, lycopene, and lutein and zeaxanthin. These two are eye protective. And lycopene most in red and pink fruits, and tomatoes, number one. Yellow and green tomatoes don't have any. So think about that when you're growing your tomatoes. It isn't like you shouldn't eat them, but eat some red ones too. And it's in all of the tomato products, the sauce, the juice, so you don't have to worry about just eating it raw. I love this. They did a big study in 2006 and found they had more lycopene in tomatoes grown organically than conventionally. So in terms of 1, 2, 3 to 5, highest tomatoes, watermelon, your red peppers, dark leafy greens, asparagus is also super high, and your purple cabbage. So this is one they're doing a lot of studies on, especially cancers. But you can see it boosts pro-collagen in your skin, and they're actually thinking it has a little bit of SPF 1.3 protection. So it's pretty amazing. And there have been 2 studies I could find that show that they may protect you against some of the harmful effects of pesticides and herbicides. So those are good plants to grow and eat. And so you've got tomatoes and pepper as sulfurs. So they're easy to grow and save seed from. Watermelon's going to be an outcrosser. I don't know about asparagus, sorry. But your leafy greens are going to be outcrossers, except lettuce. And eating the red lettuces is great. And then your cabbage is an outcrosser. So an outcrosser is a plant that cross-pollinates. And in Colorado, we have something like 974 native bees. And so when people say, well, you know, I can grow this, and they're not, it's like, I don't think so. And some of those bees, I spent quite a long time in California studying native bees, and some of them are super tiny. And you'll look at your plant and go, is that a bee? And you really need a magnifying glass to determine if it is. So if you're growing things that can cross-pollinate, you're going to have a really big isolation distance, generally 800 feet to a half a mile. Corn, probably a mile, unless you grow different dates of when they actually flower. So some corns are 80-day and some are 110. You could grow those at the same time. So the antioxidants, the beta-carotene, and these are great for all forms of cell growth. Immune function, again, really big for fetal development. So for young women having families, really protects against neural tube deformation. And then again, really high for vision and also cancer. So again, these are rich, and they're not in order. So again, these are crops most of us grow anyway or eat. So it's great to know what you're getting. This is the one I mentioned for eyes, and we have that pigment. It's the yellow pigment that we have in our eyes no matter what color they are. And they're found in kale. And this is in order of highest to lowest. So kale, great one. Basil, parsley, spinach, leeks, corn, peas, lettuce, green peppers, broccoli, carrots, and red peppers. And I forgot to say, it's only made by plants. We don't get this in any other food except these foods. The vitamins, it's a big, that's a huge category. So I just touched on it. You can see for yourself. I'm not going to read all of that because your eyes are going to glaze over. But you can see the crops highest in vitamin K, E, and C. Okay, the variety you choose. Remember how I said how important that can be just between different lettuce varieties? So here we have the orange carrots. And these are the ones they've actually tested. These are all open pollinated. But they'll cross with Queen Anne's lace. And I don't know if, do you guys here in the valley have a lot of Queen Anne's lace? Yeah. I actually bought carrot seed to do some breeding with from a seed company I won't mention, and a very big seed company, and it was all Queen Anne's lace. So I went 2 years working with my crop before I discovered it was. So if you think you're going to grow carrots to seed, pull a few up to begin with, because Queen Anne's lace is going to have, it's just a long, stringy, tough root. So I should have done that, and I didn't. I just was like, oh, sure, it's going to be a carrot. Nope, not. So again, you can see cosmic purple, that's a great carrot to grow. There are 2 Italian varieties that are very high in your anthocyanins. So Polignano, I think is how you say that, and Teggiano are 2 really and Polignano is an old landrace, and I don't know the history of this one. Pardon? 10 minutes, okay. So there's the super broccoli I talked about, Beneforte. Romanesco, that's one I was trying to think of. 10 times more cancer-fighting compounds. If you're corn, well, I just put in concho corn because I know it's grown here, and I tried to look up the nutritional value, and there you go. But Navajo Blue, these are 2 popcorn varieties, and this one contains the highest amount of the carotenoids. It just was fun to throw this in. It's like they are breeding popcorn. Which pops better in oil? Which pops better in the microwave? Which pops better just on, with the hot air? And it's all due to these things right here, determining how they pop in what substance. So I thought that was really interesting, how much information they have on breeding. Your tomatoes, I mentioned those were the high in lycopene, really great for cancer, and these varieties are really good ones. Beans are high in protein and fiber, and not much has been done on determining amounts of which in what kind of beans. And beans are a sulfur. They're an easy one to grow to seed. Okay, so this is where I mentioned the different, these are the different varieties, and TPC is the different phenolic compounds, which are all your antioxidants and whatever. So this is, iceberg lettuce is in this variety, but look at Crispino, 128 versus iceberg, 18.2. Big difference. So knowing your varietals and what level of nutrient is in them is quite important. Romaine, they've done a lot more studies on. Red romaine, higher levels than green romaine. And a man I know has bred this one, outrageous, and look at the levels, pretty high. Second Caesar red, but all the reds are high, and the greens are lower. Butterhead, not too many studies on varieties there, but again, great for the fetal development, immune function. So lettuces have their place in our nutrition. And red leaf is probably some of the highest, most studied. So there are all the ones I kind of tried to put in red so you could see the higher ones. But again, you see the difference between red and green. So it's really good to grow some red lettuces. Soil composition, I'm going to go through this fast because I'm running out of time. Plants absorb whatever you put in the soil and whatever you spray on the plant. So, and the seed will carry that. So compost is key. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. We cover crop a lot, and that really helps moisture holding, suppressing weeds, and also getting your soil bacteria healthy. Oh, and to say one thing, brassicas do not have a relationship with soil microbes. In fact, their roots are toxic to it. So that is why people say if you're growing any brassicas, which are your cabbage, blah, 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 that whole cold crop area, to rotate your beds at least every 2 years. Don't grow in the same bed because they actually can kill the soil microbes. And also just don't spend your money putting soil microbes on your brassica beds. Oh, there it is. So brassicas are a nitrogen and sulfur containing compound. You need to have those two components in your soil. And they need to be in certain levels. Compost can supply a lot, but too high levels of nitrogen can give you some plant disease problems, as like hollow stem, and also can lower the levels of glucosinolates. So sulfur is super important for your glucosinolates and all these other phenolic compounds. They found a really good ratio of nitrogen to sulfur is 7 to 9, and the only way you're going to know that is with a soil test. There we go with the cabbage looper and how it's going to decrease the levels of enzymes for your conversion into the sulforaphone for your good cancer protecting compounds. Okay, this I really want to spend time on because the last Organic Seed Alliance conference this year, the farmers in Oregon and Washington, when they said, what are your biggest problems? They said pollination. We cannot get plants to go to seed because of pollination. And I actually am seeing this in Paonia, where in the middle of summer, my tomatoes just aren't producing, they just sit there. So what happens is it can actually kill the pollen during hot weather, extended periods especially, up the high and upper 90s. And in corn, it can desiccate. The corn pollen has a very thin membrane, and it can dry that membrane out between the time it falls from the tassel to the silk if it's hot, especially 100-degree weather. So what we do, well, once the first year we moved here, we realized we had a problem with heat. So we grow under 40% shade cloth, and we see a huge difference. Okay, difference in season, real quickly. Spring grown, you're going to get your highest level of nutrients, especially those glucosinolates from the brassicas. Studies done on cabbage, higher levels of anthocyanin. In autumn, it goes into the roots. So maybe your kohlrabi and your turnips, but not the ones that you're eating the stems and florets from. And again, younger part harvested, harvest during the cool time of day, and then storage. Storage, broccoli especially, loses nutrients almost immediately after storage. And there's the cooking. You can see after 8 minutes, you got nothing. So that's really important. So these are all the sulfurs, which are easy to grow. Well, squash is not. These are annuals, but most of them are sulfurs. And these are the biennials, which are the ones I talked about you've got to dig up and store. Squash is an annual. It'll cross-pollinate, so you can either hand-pollinate or grow 2 different species like we talked about. So these are the easy ones to grow. Lettuce, probably, like I said, I tied it together and it wouldn't cross. Those are the easy ones to grow to seed. This is a good picture to show you why some tomatoes and peppers cross, even though they're sulfurs, because here we have the male structure hanging out. The pollen's right on the end of there. The bee can easily pick that up and transfer it. This is one that does not have it. So if you look at your plants, the heirloom tomatoes, a lot of them are problems with crossing because they're closer to the wild species. And hot peppers definitely will. I'd never grow sweet peppers and hot peppers at all together because I breed the sweet peppers. Lettuce, super sulfur, easy to grow, and you'll get seed. What you want to do is pick the seed when about 50% of those blossoms are fluffy like that, because otherwise the seed's going to shatter and you're going to lose half of it. I cut it, put it in a brown paper bag, put it in a cool, dry place, and then let it shatter or rub it. Or what we do with kids is put all the heads on a sheet and have them dance on them. And then we winnow the seed. Kids love it. It's a great kids project. So this is, okay, I'm going to skip to another slide. Yeah, so I'm going to go real quick here. These are the ones that I talked about earlier. Some of you may not have been in here. They need a cold period. And so you can see, these need to be stored or grown in the cold. I get onions to overwinter in our garden if we put straw in them. So the ones that I've seen that you could do, carrots aren't that hard to dig up and store. Broccoli, the heading broccolis, you might be able to get to go to seed, but that just gives you an idea of when they talk about vernalization. They need those cold temperatures in order for the second season to go to seed. Okay, this is really important, especially at these seed saver conferences. People don't save high enough populations, and so you get what's called inbreeding depression, and it's just the genetics just go right downhill. So we're seeing a lot of our heirloom varieties are not the same as they used to be. They've lost their genetics. So understanding population is super important. You can see which ones are you going to grow. So this column is commercial growers, and they're actually preserving as much genetics as they can. Corn, 1,000 to 2,000 plants. We're not going to be doing that. Brassica's pretty high. But if you're a home grower and you just want to maintain the variety, your numbers go way down. Isolation distance, that is based on how far you've got to put the plants from each other or your neighbors to not get cross-pollination. So you can see, peppers, I never do 40 feet and I never get cross-pollination. I grow them right. Well, I grow just one variety. If I grow 2, they are 40 feet apart. But You'll see lettuce, they say 10 to 20 feet. You could get away with way less than that. And that's if you're growing different varieties, not the same variety. So that's just about, we talked about the inbreeding depression. There are some species that actually have to have these families of brassica, like your broccoli would need mustard in order to have pollen that would be compatible. And we talked about that. Okay, so brassica, I'm curious about if people want to try this. The heading broccolis, you may be able to do it, not the biennial sprouting broccolis. Those are the ones that they just get the heads we eat on the sides. The big heading varieties, they have lower maturity dates. So if you pick from some of these that are really low, Decicio, Burgundy, and then start them early and space them. If you're growing to seed, it doesn't matter what you're growing. Space things further apart than you would for eating. Like most growing to seed, 2 feet. If you grow a brassica to seed, it'll get 5 feet high and huge. And you'll also want to stake it once it goes to flower because it's going to flop over. So that brassica, those shatter really fast. So mustard's an easy one to save seed from, if any of you are doing that, but you want to pick it when 60 to 70% are ripe, and then let them shatter in a bag versus on the ground. We have growers in Hawaii who grow these, and they just put them on tarps, and actually even the big growers in Oregon and Washington, and they drive over them with trucks. The seed is really hard. It's a little ball seed, and that's how they... Okay, so I'll take questions while you load that. Or actually, I can.